October, in eastern Tennessee, always carries a feeling all its own. The heavy, stifling heat of summer is gone. The noise of tourists has faded away. All that remains are narrow roads winding through forests, and lakes so still that locals like to say, if you stand there long enough, you can hear your own thoughts. It is the kind of silence that makes people feel safe. And it is also the kind of silence that can swallow every trace. If something happens, and no one is there to witness it. In 2004, within this seemingly peaceful setting, a family of 5 drove away from the city in search of a few days of rest. No one was watching them. No one thought they needed to be noticed, because they looked just like thousands of other families, ordinary people, carrying luggage, children, and the hope that stepping away from daily life, even briefly, would make everything feel lighter. But after that trip, they never came back. No call for help, no signs of struggle, no clear piece of evidence left behind. Only one question that would haunt investigators for years to come. How could 5 people, in a single vehicle, vanish completely, in a place that seemed so peaceful? From the outside, there was nothing about the family that drew attention. A husband and wife in their late 30s, past the dreaminess of youth, yet not quite settled into the stability they once believed was certain. 3 young children, old enough to have thoughts of their own, but still dependent on their parents for the simplest things in everyday life. They were not living in tragedy, but they were not living with ease either. Bills arrived with quiet regularity each month, neatly placed on the kitchen table. Long work hours pushed dinner later than planned. Conversations were cut short by exhaustion, by pressure, by the feeling that tomorrow would look exactly the same as today. There were no explosive arguments between the couple. Only small conflicts, silently accumulating. Things left unsaid, yet felt by both of them. A distance, not large enough to name, but long enough to weigh heavily. That weekend trip was never planned as an escape. They didn't talk about starting over. They didn't talk about major changes. They simply wanted to leave the city for a few days, to cook simple meals, to let the children run freely without worry, to sleep without being jolted awake by alarm clocks or work calls. It was a deeply human desire, one that nearly every family experiences. At some point in their lives, the preparations for the trip unfolded in a familiar, ordinary way, just like so many times before. There was no rush, no secrecy, no sense that this decision carried more weight than it should. They packed enough food for 3 days. Simple things, easy to cook, easy to eat. Paper towels, trash bags, a handful of small items that any family throws into their luggage before leaving home. An old flashlight was taken from a drawer unused for a long time, but packed anyway, just in case. They printed out a paper map and folded it carefully. Cell service around the lake was often unreliable, and they knew that. No one saw it as a risk, just a small detail of life before everything depended on a screen. The fishing gear wasn't theirs. A neighbor had lent it to them, with the casual remark that the kids might enjoy trying it. No one was planning to fish at night. No one was thinking beyond a short getaway. The SUV was loaded full, luggage stacked tightly in the back, a cooler wedged between bags, the children's backpacks placed side by side, each one holding the small belongings that kids believe are essential for any trip away from home. Before getting into the car, the children argued over who would sit where. A brief disagreement, quickly forgotten. The doors closed. The engine started. No worried glances were exchanged. No feeling that they were leaving something behind forever. Just a family pulling away from home on an ordinary afternoon, believing they would return in a few days, carrying small stories, a handful of photos, and the sense of relief everyone hopes to bring back from a short trip. Their final stop was a small gas station along the road leading into the lake area. It wasn't a place for tourists, but a familiar stop for locals. One aging fuel pump, faded advertisements taped to the glass doors, a small bell chiming each time someone stepped inside. They arrived as the sun was setting. The last light of day washed the sky in a soft shade of orange, beautiful enough that no one felt rushed. The SUV pulled in, heavy with luggage, its rear end sagging close to the ground. Inside the store, One adult stood at the counter to pay. The other bent down to help the children choose a few pieces of candy they didn't really need. A moment that felt entirely familiar, entirely ordinary. Nothing about it suggested this would be the last time they would stand together under those fluorescent lights. The security camera captured everything. Grainy footage, slightly unsteady, but clear enough to show the children climbing back into the vehicle one by one. One of them sat by the window, face pressed against the cold glass, eyes drifting outward like any child growing bored on a long drive. The two adults exchanged a brief glance before taking their seats in the front. No tension, no panic, no gesture that suggested fear or urgency. They didn't look around as if waiting for someone. They didn't look into the camera. They simply did what millions of people do every day: stop, and then move on. The SUV pulled away from the gas station, disappearing into the road growing darker ahead. No one there knew that the images just recorded would become the only proof that they had been there at all, that they had laughed, spoken, lived right before vanishing from the world, quietly and without a trace. Saturday passed quietly. No calls, no messages. But it wasn't enough to worry anyone. The lake area was known for poor cell service. Besides, they had said they wanted a break from their phones to give the children a real weekend, uninterrupted by the outside world. Those at home pictured the scene clearly. A slow morning, children running around the cabin, the smell of simple food drifting from a small kitchen. Maybe they were fishing, maybe walking along the lakeshore. There was no reason to disrupt those images. Sunday came and went the same way. Still no contact. And still, no one called it unusual. A short trip can make people lose track of time. They might return late. They might stay an extra night. No one felt the need to press for answers. It wasn't until Sunday night passed that the silence began to carry a different weight. No longer the silence of rest, but the silence of absence. Monday morning arrived. No call to excuse an absence from work. No children showed up at school. No message of explanation was sent. Phones rang, then went dead. Voicemail boxes were full or unreachable. Calls began to repeat, closer together now, carrying a concern no one wanted to name too early. A relative drove past their house, half hoping to see the SUV already parked in the driveway, imagining the trip had ended early for some perfectly ordinary reason. But the yard was empty. The doors were closed. The house was silent. In that moment, worry stopped being a passing thought. It became something solid, cold, settling in the chest. And that was when everyone understood. This silence was no longer the kind that felt safe. When police arrived at the lakeside cabin, everyone believed they were about to find something. A sign of activity, something left behind. At the very least, a clue, however small, confirming that the family had actually made it there. But nothing like that awaited them. The cabin door was still locked. No signs of forced entry. No indication that any lights had been turned on the night before. When the door was opened, the air inside was cold and undisturbed, exactly as it had been when the owner last left. The floors were clean. The furniture neatly arranged. No smell of food. No children's footprints. Not a single sign that 5 people had ever stepped inside. The beds were still perfectly made. The kitchen showed no signs of use. The refrigerator was empty. No grocery bags. No clothing. Nothing that a family on a weekend trip would unquestionably bring with them. The feeling was difficult to name. It was not the scene of a tragedy, nor was it the aftermath of violence. It was an absolute absence. As if the trip had never happened. As if that weekend had never existed. Outside the cabin, the forest stood still. The lake lay flat and silent. No vehicle was parked nearby. No sound broke the quiet except the wind moving gently through the leaves. Nearby cabins were empty as well. Their owners lived far away and had not returned since summer. Police expanded the search area. They drove along the narrow roads surrounding the lake, checked boat docks, trails, and makeshift parking areas. But the farther they went, the more everything looked the same. The more they searched, the clearer and more unsettling the absence became. Not because they found something terrible, but because they found nothing at all. A family of 5 had vanished. and the place that should have borne some trace of their presence was so completely empty that it forced one chilling question. Had they ever been here at all? When every search path led to emptiness, investigators were forced to return to the last point of certainty, the last place the family was seen alive. The small roadside gas station, preserved in grainy but undeniable security footage. That was where the K9 units were brought in. They arrived early in the morning. The air was cold, the pavement still damp with dew. The handler stood quietly, carefully placing the scent article on the ground. Within seconds, noses dropped low, bodies tensed, and then they moved. The scent trail led away from the gas station, following the same road the SUV had taken the night before. Investigators followed behind, step by deliberate step. Few words were spoken. Everyone understood they were clinging to the most fragile thing left, an invisible trace of life. The scent weakened as the road turned to gravel. The forest thickened. Sunlight broke through the canopy in scattered fragments. And then, at a bend overlooking the lake, the dogs slowed. They stopped completely at a small gravel clearing. They did not move into the woods. They did not turn back. They did not continue in any other direction. The handler tried again, a second time, a third. The result was the same. The scent ended there, as if the movement of the entire family had stopped altogether at the water's edge. The moment sent a chill through many of those present. K9 units rarely produce results like this. People walking leave trails. Even in panic or confusion, scent usually drifts into the forest, forming a chaotic pattern. But here, there was no pattern at all. Only an ending clean, precise, and deeply unsettling. From that moment on, the lake was no longer just part of the landscape. It became a question, a theory, a possibility no one wanted to say aloud. Yet everyone began thinking the same thing. If they didn't go forward, if they didn't turn back, then where did they go? And the answer lay quietly before them, beneath the calm, seemingly harmless surface of the water. With no trail left to follow, the investigation was forced to turn in a different direction. No longer searching the ground, but searching through theories. Each possibility was placed on the table, examined closely, and then slowly undermined by the same thing, the absence of evidence. The first theory was always voluntary disappearance. A family under financial pressure, abandoning their old life to start over somewhere else. It sounded plausible, until the details were compared. No bank accounts were emptied, no credit cards were used, no identification documents were prepared. No trace of their existence appeared anywhere after that night. A planned disappearance always leaves footprints. This one did not. The next theory was violence. A chance encounter. A crime committed under the cover of darkness. But again, the questions circled back to the same point. No crime scene. No abandoned vehicle. No witnesses. No reports of any incident matching the time and location. Finally, there was the possibility of an accident. A small mistake. A curve in the road. A moment of lost control. This was the theory many found easiest to accept, and also the most frustrating. The lake had been searched. Divers went down. Sonar scans were conducted. There was no debris, no oil slick, nothing to prove that a vehicle had ever plunged into the water. Every theory had a reason to be believed, and every theory had a reason to collapse. The truth seemed to exist somewhere in the spaces between, but no one knew which direction to look. As time passed, the case took on a deeply unsettling quality. It did not defy logic, it simply refused to follow the patterns people were used to when trying to understand a tragedy. And when every possibility led to a dead end, the only thing left was not an answer, but a silence that grew heavier with time, settling over the lake, over the case files, and over the people still waiting for an explanation of how an entire family could disappear as if they had never existed at all. Time continued to move forward, even as the case did not. The days of intensive searching gradually thinned out. Police vehicles no longer appeared regularly on the road leading to the lake. Press conferences became less frequent, then stopped altogether. Public attention, as it so often does, shifted elsewhere. The family's name no longer appeared on the evening news. The faces once familiar on television slowly faded from public memory. But for their loved ones, time did not make things easier. It only stretched the waiting. The family home was kept just as it was. No one dared to change much. Clothes still hung in the closets. The children's small belongings remained exactly where they had been left, as if they might return at any moment. Each time the door was opened, the house filled with a different kind of silence, not the quiet of night, but the absence of sounds that had once been familiar. Birthdays came and went. Holidays passed without explanations. Each year added another number, not to the children's ages, but to the time since they were last seen. In police files, the case was gradually placed into a different category, not because it had been solved, but because there was nothing new to pursue. Investigators who had worked the case from the beginning were reassigned. New names reviewed old reports, but could not change the outcome. The lake returned to its ordinary rhythm. People fished. Children played along safer shores. Few remembered that beneath those waters once lay an unanswered question. 9 years passed this way. No noise, no progress. Only those left behind, learning how to live with a void that could not be filled, a void called hope, thinned by time, but never fully gone. 9 years after the family vanished, the lake was no longer spoken of as a crime scene. For most people, it had become just another part of the landscape, a familiar body of water reflecting the sky, carrying no memories, no unanswered questions. The case files lay untouched in storage. Pages had yellowed with time. Lines, once written in hope, were now closed in resignation. No one was waiting for a breakthrough. No one believed the truth was still there, intact, simply unseen. In the summer of 2013, an environmental company was hired to conduct an erosion survey in the area. The work had nothing to do with missing persons or criminal investigations. It was purely technical, measuring terrain, documenting changes beneath the water over time. The equipment they used was compact and precise. Flying low over the lake, collecting thousands of images, most of them nothing more than mud, rocks, and indistinct, dark shapes. The work was quiet. No one on the team believed they were passing over a secret that had been asleep for nearly a decade, until one image made someone stop. It wasn't immediately clear, just a shape darker than its surroundings. A form with lines too straight, too balanced, to belong to nature. It lay at an angle near a slope on the lakebed, at a depth previous searches had never reached. At first, they assumed it was a data anomaly, an illusion created by light and depth. But when the same shape appeared again at the same location, doubt began to give way to unease. The technician zoomed in, pulled back, compared it to objects encountered in other projects. And slowly, a thought began to take shape. One no one said out loud right away, but everyone felt. What lay beneath the lake might not be just an inanimate piece of terrain. It might be the very thing people had walked past, stood above, and believed they had searched for thoroughly for 9 long years. Technology, something that did not exist in 2004, now quietly opened a door. Not with noise, not with announcements, but with a single, blurred image enough to resurrect a question once thought to have sunk into oblivion. When the information was passed on to authorities, the initial reaction was not excitement, but caution. 9 years without leads had taught everyone the same lesson. Hope must be verified. Step by step, modern sonar equipment was brought in. The first scans appeared with a clarity far beyond anything available in 2004. And this time, the image was no longer ambiguous. A vehicle lay at the bottom of the lake, intact, upright, as if it had quietly come to a stop and waited. The license plate was confirmed. There was no longer any doubt. The family's SUV, the same vehicle seen leaving the gas station that night, had been here all along, resting beneath the water for 9 years. The recovery was not rushed. Specialized teams understood they were not simply lifting a vehicle from the lake. They were reaching toward answers that too many people had waited for in despair. Every cable was placed carefully, every movement calculated, so as not to disturb what time had preserved. As the vehicle slowly separated from the layers of mud and silt accumulated over the years, the water churned, then settled again. No one spoke. No one looked away. Inside the car, they were found exactly as they had left the gas station. 5 people, still in their seats, seatbelts fastened. The children in the back, the parents in the front. There were no signs of a struggle, no forced doors, no shattered glass from panic. Everything was heartbreakingly calm. Subsequent examinations found no evidence of violence, no intoxicants, no unusual injuries. The cause of death was determined to be drowning, a simple conclusion, carrying the weight of 9 years of speculation, fear, and imagination. Investigators returned to the original site, the gravel clearing where the K9 units had stopped. A small slope leading down to the lake, unfenced, unmarked, without warning signs. In daylight, it was clearly visible, but in darkness, unfamiliar terrain could easily make it appear to be a safe pull-off. The sequence slowly came into focus. The vehicle moved forward at low speed. The tires slipped on gravel. Gravity pulled everything into the water. As the car submerged, the lights went out. Power failed. Water rushed in under complete darkness. Everything happened faster than human reaction could keep up with. There was no crime here, no villain, only a chain of very small, very ordinary moments linked together into a point of no return. The final truth did not bring relief. It brought silence, because sometimes the most painful realization is not discovering who caused a tragedy, but understanding that it could happen to anyone, on a dark night, in a place that seemed completely harmless. When the information reached authorities, the initial reaction was not excitement, but caution. 9 years without leads had taught everyone the same lesson. Hope must be tested carefully, step by step. Modern sonar equipment was brought in. The first scans appeared with a clarity far beyond anything available in 2004. And this time, the image was no longer vague. A vehicle lay at the bottom of the lake, intact, upright, as if it had quietly come to a stop and waited. The license plate was confirmed. There was no longer any doubt. The missing family's SUV, the same vehicle seen leaving the gas station in the darkness years earlier, had been here for 9 long years. The recovery was not rushed. Specialized teams understood they were not simply lifting a vehicle from the water. They were touching answers that too many people had waited for in desperation. Every cable was placed with care, every movement calculated, so as not to disturb what time had preserved. As the vehicle slowly separated from the layers of mud and silt accumulated over the years, the water churned, then settled again. No one spoke. No one dared to look away. Inside the car, they were found exactly as they had left the gas station. 5 people, still in their seats, seatbelts fastened. The children in the back, the parents in the front. No signs of a struggle, no forced doors, no shattered glass from panic. Everything was heartbreakingly calm. Subsequent examinations found no evidence of violence, no intoxicants, no unusual injuries. The cause of death was determined to be drowning, a simple conclusion, carrying the weight of 9 years of speculation, fear, and imagination. Investigators returned to the original site, the gravel clearing where the K9 units had lost the scent. A small slope leading down into the lake, unfenced, unmarked, without warning signs. In daylight, it was clearly visible, but in darkness, on unfamiliar terrain, it could easily be mistaken for a safe place to pull over. The sequence slowly emerged. The vehicle moved forward at low speed. The tires slipped on gravel. Gravity pulled everything into the water. As the car submerged, the lights went out. Power failed. Water rushed in under complete darkness. Everything happened faster than human reaction could keep up with. There was no crime here, no villain, only a chain of very small, very ordinary moments linked together into a point of no return. The final truth did not bring a sense of victory. It brought silence. Because sometimes, the most painful realization is not discovering who caused a tragedy, but understanding that it could happen to anyone, on a dark night, in a place that seemed completely harmless.